We are up to chapter 10 in Hebrews. So this chapter is kind of a transition in thought a little bit. Partway through, we catch the tail end of what started in chapter 8 as an overview of Jesus as our high priest and the sacrifice that his life was for us. The fact that he humbled himself completely to the will of God, and the plan to redeem us. He saw a future with us in it, with him, and that gave him the strength through the joy of that picture to walk it out, to walk out a challenging, painful life for our sake. And he did that perfectly so that the old way of approaching God was done with, and we have a new, complete, perfect path to him. So, I said the first about half of this chapter is kind of the wrap-up of that section, and then the transition into the rest of the book. So it's a little bit longer than most of the chapters. We'll do it piece by piece. I won't read the whole thing through in one shot now. You can throw first group up, and we'll start working through it. So verses 1 through 4 of chapter 10 of Hebrews. For since the law has but a shadow of the good things to come, instead of the true form of these realities, it can never, by the same sacrifices that are continually offered every year, make perfect to those who draw near. Otherwise, would they not have ceased to be offered, since the worshippers, having once been cleansed, would no longer have any consciousness of sin? But in these sacrifices, a reminder of sins every year, for it's impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sins. So, we've referenced the old system. There was the picture we see a lot in this book is the Day of Atonement, where the priest would go purify himself. Then he would be the one time a year where he could go in the Holy of Holies, and he would there'd be a sacrifice, and that blood for that animal would be shed to cleanse the dwelling place, the temple, the tabernacle and the temple, so that the contamination of sin for the year could be washed away, so that God could dwell with his people. It was all about connecting with the people. And then there's also these sacrifices for sins and sacrifices that were tied to the harvest and the planting cycles for an opportunity to recognize that God was the provider, and ultimately and offer these sacrifices to acknowledge that his grace allowed them to have food every year and all that. But that system, just by the fact that it had to repeat itself over and over again, was the required path. It was the only way they could have God dwell within them, live in their midst as a nation. But it was also in itself a reminder of how weak that system actually was, by the fact that they had to do it over and over and over and over again. And the fact that they're doing it over and over again made them aware of their sins every time. It was the best they had to work with, but it was clearly not perfect. It was clearly not enough. And so the fact that Jesus could come and once for all solve this for us, solve this relationship, there's so many angles on how great that is for us, and it's certainly worth meditating on. And the idea too, these are just animals. There wasn't. We talk about the blood, and the blood is symbolic of life. And so you had this death of sin that was contaminating everything. And so there had to be an offering of life to combat the offering of death. But an animal's life is not perfect and is not representative of us. They are not made in God's image as we are. And Jesus is the perfect image of God. So his blood was perfect sacrifice, perfect cleansing and restoration for us. And so the idea here too isn't just to say, look how stupid that old system was. It's not to condemn the old system. It was God's. I said it's the best he could do with what he had to work with at the time because we had failed repeatedly over and over again. He knew we were going to continue, so he had to be continually washed. But so it's not how awful was that system though. It's how great is Jesus? How great is our new covenant with Jesus? And so that's what we want to keep in mind. So let's move on to just the next section, verses 5 through 10. Let's read. And this section kind of is, I guess, heading into it. It's discussing Jesus' sacrifice, and its effectiveness was based on his obedience. And thus, we can look to that in the way we live our lives. In reflecting of the way Jesus chose to live his life. So, consequently, when Christ came into the world, he said, "Sacrifices and offerings you've not desired, but a body have you prepared for me. In burnt offerings and sin offerings you've taken no pleasure. Then I said, Behold, I have come to do your will, O God, as is written of me in the scroll of the book." When he said above, "You have neither desired nor taken pleasure in sacrifices and offerings, and burnt offerings and sin offerings, these are offered according to the law," then he added, "Behold, I have come to do your will." He does away with the first in order to establish the second. And by that, we will have been sanctified through the offering of the body of Jesus Christ once for all. So we're quoting Psalm 40 here. When you see the quotes in this section, and I guess the heart of that psalm is "God is my help and my deliverer." That's the title you'll see a lot of times put in. Those little titles aren't actually original Bible. Those are like translators throw those in, by the way, to help us work our way through sections and kind of see what's happening. I guess an overview, but. The picture here is this is David. He was a precursor, a shadow of who Jesus was going to be as our Messiah. And it's a reminder that the act of taking on our humanity was an act of submission by Jesus. And this section here, this idea that God wasn't after this. He didn't take pleasure in killing all these animals. He didn't enjoy that process. He doesn't want to, death is not his way. He brings life. The system was required at the time, but a body you've prepared for me is obviously a reference to Jesus coming to this world. And we see his heart where it says, "Behold, I've come to do your will." And that was Jesus' perfect submission. And it's the translation stuff is kind of interesting too. Again, remember, most of the time when we're reading these quotes, they're actually coming from what's called the Septuagint, because that was the Greek translation of the Bible at the time of the way the New Testament was being written. And so that took the original Hebrew of the Old Testament, translated into Greek, because everyone spoke Greek at the time. So at times there is variance in the way the Greek was translated versus the original Hebrew. And that partially a lot of that reflects kind of the mindset of the time, the understanding of the people of the time as they wrote it. It's not enough to contaminate it in a way. It's still true. But there's variations in there that will, if we notice the difference, it will come up more later on. It'll help us kind of when there's nuance in the interpretation. So I guess if we were to read Psalm 40 verses 6 to 8, which is quoted here, in again the ESV, which is what I'm using here, it says, "In sacrifice and offering you've not delighted, but you've given me an open ear. Burnt offering and sin offering you've not required. Then I said, Behold, I've come. In the scroll of the book is written of me. I delight to do your will. Oh my God, your law is within my heart." So the one line here, it says, "You've given me an open ear." And then we just read here, it says, a body you've prepared for me. So it's like, those are kind of a little different. What does that even mean? And then if we read the Septuagint translation, the Septuagint Greek, and then that's translated again, obviously, into English for us, but it says, "Sacrifice and offering you did not want, but ears you fashioned for me." So we hear that ear thing is coming, and the idea here, it's because I would like us all to explore these things. When we see a quote, go back and read it, and you'll come back. So I want to cover these things when there is a variation, like why is they quoting this, but it's not the same? So what seems to be going on here is, if you read, again, I have to take scholar word for it, but if you read this in the Greek, the editing, the changes they've been made were because it actually made it flow and rhyme better. It was going to help them memorize it better. So some of this rephrasing was by the person that I think Paul wrote Hebrews, was to help. Okay, a quick backtrack. There's almost no scripture that tells you to read the Bible. Why is that? Because they didn't have Bibles to read. They didn't have printing presses. They didn't have books. Almost all the time, someone was reading the scripture to them. They would go and meet together, and there would be like one copy because they were prohibitively expensive to produce. Like I think someone quoted, I think it may have been Hebrews, one of the books. It basically the equivalent of like $5,000 to get one copy made in this like New Testament time, or just after the New Testament when they were having to like pay someone to handwrite all this out. So the vast majority of the way people would interact with the Bible was hearing it read to them, and so it makes sense to write something in a way that would flow better to the ear. It would help people, it'd stick in their head and memorize it. So a lot of the way this section, this quote seems to be edited is based primarily on just making it sound better in Greek, so it would stick with them. But also, this is a callback to creation. A body you prepared for me. There's a future looking of this, because it's a psalm, so it's written back like David's time. There's a future looking to Jesus as the Messiah. So there's a body created for Jesus to live in and to live out this life. But it's also a callback to Adam, and this idea of like ears you fashioned for me is the idea of like, if you were making like a clay sculpture of someone, you had to like dig out the ear, like to make it in, to sculpt it. So this is this picture of a callback to tying back Adam to Jesus, and this idea of creation and the visual. It would give them a visual image of a body being created by digging out the ears. I don't know. So there's a lot of little things going on in there, and it's worth exploring some of those things and see. Obviously, we're not all probably going to learn biblical Greek and Hebrew, but there are people who have and can explain and kind of lay out some of this grammatical stuff for us and why the choices are made that they are. So again, this pleasure thing, the word gets thrown out sometimes called propitiation, and a lot of times that's talking about like easing God's wrath. It's about making him happy. It's this pleasure. Again, just a picture. God is not angry. He did not want to kill things to appease his anger. There's no smiting going on here. It was, we needed the blood because life is in the blood. That's how we cleanse. And so death was required to get the blood. Didn't make God happy to incur the death, but in fact, the vast majority of these sacrificial offerings, a lot of it went to be burned, and some of it went to the priest, but it was also a time of celebration. It was a feasting situation. The idea of sacrifice was not just, I'm giving up something to this God and then I walk away with nothing. It was, I'm coming here to celebrate God's goodness and fellowship with him and enjoy a meal together as a family with God. We've given him some, we get some, and we worship together it's a joyous time of celebration. It's not just weeping or just giving up something. It's a celebration a lot of times. Again, God is so relational. He so wants a connection with us. In all, like the whole point of the whole thing, Jesus coming was relationship, so he could live with us forever. All right, let's move on, 11 through 14. So this is kind of a final overview. It's kind of wrapping up this section again. Every priest stands daily at his service, offering repeatedly the same sacrifices, which can never take away sins. But when Christ had offered for all time a single sacrifice for sins, he sat down at the right hand of God, waiting from that time until his enemies should be made a footstool for his feet. For by a single offering he's perfected for all time those who are being sanctified. There's this picture of the priests having to work, having to repeatedly do anything, and being on their feet. And there's kind of multiple things going on with that. And the fact that they're laboring, for one thing. They're doing this over and over again. They can't ever rest because there's always someone else coming with sacrifice. There's always work to be done. But there's also this idea of they're before God, and that relationship has not been repaired through the work of Jesus yet. And they were still God's servants. And a servant doesn't get to sit with their master. They're on their feet. They're as a sign of respect, as a sign of understanding the dynamic in the relationship. And this picture of Jesus sat down at the right hand of God after he had completed the work and lived his perfect life and sacrificed and rose again. And there's multiple things going on with that image. And Jesus, his work is done. He's done everything he needs to do to restore this relationship. He's in heaven interceding for us. That's through there. He's not just quit. He's like, you're on your own now. But this idea that he can rest now as the work is done. He's gone through all he needs to go through for us. But also it shows his authority. He's sitting at the right hand of God. That's the most honored place. He is our ultimate authority, our ultimate high priest, the perfect one, the only begotten Son, the number one guy, so to speak. And also the fact that he recognizes his relationship with God is one where he can rest in God's presence. He can sit and commune with God. And he opened that path for us too. We are sons now. We are not just servants. We are his children. We are able to just walk in the door confidently as we understand who we are in him and have we've submitted to him. He's still God. He's still the all-powerful creator of everything. But he wants to have that kind of relationship with us as a parent and child. And you, I hope, didn't have to stand in your parents' presence at all times when you're being raised. I hope you had at least some level of loving connection with your parents at some point, or you're able to recognize that that's what it should be, and you should be able to relax and enjoy each other's company and sit down and rest together and commune together. And that's available to us now with, again, the all-powerful, almighty creator God. That's what he has for us now. And there's so many of these things. We're here. A lot of us are hearing these things that we've heard over and over again. And it's so easy for that to become a commonplace thought. It's so easy to, you grow up with your parents. You're there every day. You don't, as a teenager, I did not frequently have a lot of I can look back fondly on them, but in the moment, I was not like, oh, this is so great. I get to sit with my dad, and watch TV or talk or whatever. My children savor every moment they get to spend with us, I'm sure. It's like I prayed, I want this to be real because I want it to change us. I want it to fundamentally just help us to grow in our understanding of how much he loves us. But it's also not about the feelings. It's not about the emotions. We can feel like crap and we want to eat junk food or scroll the internet or whatever, and we can sit down and be like, no, I should read my Bible. And just that act of submission, because ideally we get it, and the feelings are there, and it just flows out of who we are, and there's never any hesitancy to spend time with God. But I'm not quite there. So there's these choices to act in submission because I've made that choice that I want to submit my life to God. And I'm going to probably let the feelings dictate otherwise sometimes. But I don't have to. And I always have this choice where I can do the thing that I don't necessarily feel like doing to spend that time with God, to do what I know is right, to do what I know will grow me. And it's not the act to make God happy. And it's not the act to get him to do something for me. And it's not anything that, it's that I've chosen to submit my life to him. And with all my heart, I want to do that. And sometimes that's going to take effort because the feelings aren't going to line up with that. But more and more, I want to spend time with him that he can change my heart, that all of me wants nothing more than to connect more and more with him and becomes more and more like him, and that has a snowball effect and just grows more and more. So there's the effort, we can not have to make those conscious choices to put ourselves down as much and let it flow out of who we are as we grow. So that's ultimately the goal. So we can rest as Jesus rests at the right hand of God. That is there for us as we understand. Again, if we were truly to stand before God in his awesomeness, we see a few people have done that, and their first thought is, I'm dead. I am not worthy of this. I don't belong here. But that's not the truth anymore for us if we're in Jesus. But we're going to be aware of where we're missing it, I think. The closer we are to God, the more and more those things are going to pop up, because we're going to be, just being in perfection, to being perfect grace, perfect love, makes you aware of all the things that aren't. So the more time we spend with him, the more that stuff is going to be revealed, and the more opportunity we have to get rid of it and no longer hold on to it, recognizing I don't need that anymore. I see God, and he doesn't have that crap. He's not struggling with, eating junk food or, whatever we want to throw at it there, or he doesn't have a temper. He doesn't feel down and make, we see what can be the more we're with him. And the more, I think, the more discomfort with hanging on to the things that are keeping us from that perfection as we spend time with him. All right, we keep moving here. Yeah, let's keep moving. Section 11 to 14. Oh, wait, I just read that. Never mind. I was looking at the wrong section notes. Oh yeah, the priest's rest. So again, a lot of. Sorry, I'm going to go back to some of this. A lot of Hebrews is kind of explaining, kind of structured around the concept. Psalm 110, especially verses 1 and 4 would get referenced. Verse 1 says, "The Lord says to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool," which we just had a quote from. And we get the Melchizedek quote in there too. And remember, in verse 13 of Hebrews 10 back here, it says, "Waiting from that time until his enemies should be made a footstool for his feet." And remember, Jesus has completed the work, but we are still in a time of transition. It's already but not yet is the phrase a lot of people will use to describe that, where it's all done, but it's still being played out. And primarily the idea is that God wants as many people that could possibly come into his kingdom to be. He wants to make that opportunity. So there's this extended period of time where more people get to be born and live their lives and accept him. But that also, the earth is not renewed yet. So we are still, there are powers and principalities. There are demons still at play. We have authority over all this. We don't have to succumb to any of their influence or oppression, because we see Jesus' life. He didn't struggle with it. He didn't fight. He didn't struggle against sickness. He saw it and he was like, "Hey, everyone, look, I'm going to heal this person right now." Like there was no doubt. There was no qualms. The guy comes. I was just reading the Gadarene demoniac, the guy with Legion, all the demons. Guy comes up and Jesus. What's his first? He's not afraid. He's not. I mean, maybe there were emotions, but we don't. I'm guessing not. But because he knew who he was, and he knew who he was, what power he had. A guy who can break chains, has run around naked, comes up to you. He just casts them out. Like there's no. That's the way we can walk through that kind of confidence, that kind of assurity that it's not will God come through. It's like this is already done. Jesus paid this. Jesus could do it. I can do it. All these things and more. He's given us the power, the authority, all these things. And as we walk into it, as we practice it too, our faith is not going to grow if it's all just thoughts in our head. We have to take steps to give God the opportunity to work through us in our personal life and in public. And there is... I've said multiple times, our living our lives out faithfully for him is his own witness to us to increase our faith. As we do the things we know to do and we see him come through for us, that is probably one of the greatest ways to grow your faith, grow your belief and understanding in who he is and what he has for us. So we read here, he is He has perfected for all time those who are being sanctified. And this idea that it's been done and it's done for eternity, this perfect tense, this idea that is continually always. And so we're clean from our past. Supporting, yeah. Okay, I'll just say we're clean from our past. There is nothing you've done that cannot be cleansed, cannot be forgiven. There's nothing that you wake up at night and cringe about from your past that God is holding against you. So we can approach God with a clear conscience, like I talked about. That coming into his presence and revealing these things that we don't want to hold on to. We can still go into his presence, though. Like even now, we're not going to be perfect. We're working towards that. There's likely to always be things in this life. It's possible for us to achieve perfection in theory, but we still can be in his presence even with those things clinging to us. Like that's the thing, is it shouldn't keep us away from him. We get to be in his presence, and those things will be revealed in those moments that we can work on. But those don't keep us from being in his presence anymore because Jesus has opened the veil. It won't kill us. It won't destroy us to be in his presence anymore. We have the ability to boldly walk into God's presence and spend time with him. In his pure glory, we take that opportunity to reveal, like I said, to reveal those things and grow. But they don't keep us from his presence anymore. Because we can come in with a clear conscience. As long as we're making the choices we know to make, there's nothing to change. That we continue to grow, we continue to work, but we don't let them hold us back from the relationship. And we're no longer subject to the curse of the law. The law gave us perspective on right and wrong. That's why it was there. It kept Israel from going off the rails and get out of control and just letting murder run rampant and all these things. It gave her like a restraint. It gave parameters to keep them alive in a decent society, in a sense. Those rules are the foundation for healthy societies nowadays. It was good, but it was also, again, like those repeated sacrifices, it was a reminder also that we still were in sin and weren't fully clear from that. And that was always going to be an issue because there was always reminders with those sacrifices and the rules that had to be followed. It wasn't relational. It was, these are the things to do. And then we didn't have the Spirit. They didn't have the Spirit in their hearts to connect with, to change their hearts. It was, they had an act of submission and they chose to do hopefully, very few of them did from what we see, the picture of the nation. But it was just a series of external acts to help cleanse the space so that they could maintain some sort of relationship with them. A few people got it. David seems to have gotten it. Moses seems to have gotten some of that picture, that glimpse, the ability to have that personal relationship, that connection with him. Abraham, some of these examples we're going to see in the next chapter. But the system was there to cover those that weren't able to go that far for whatever reason, whether they held themselves back. And we don't have to sin anymore. There is no instance moving forward where you will have to choose to sin. You can look back and say, at any time where you know that you screwed up, you sinned. And you can say, could I have made a different choice? And probably you could say yes. But if you weren't spiritually and emotionally to the point, spiritually and then thus emotionally, to the point where you could make a different choice, you really couldn't in the moment. But that's available to us. Your heart can change, so you're your desires, the way you think changes, so that sin is no longer an option for you anymore. That's not who you are. You don't see yourself as a person who would do that kind of thing anymore. I take care of myself. I love myself because of him. And therefore, I don't act that way. That's just not a natural way for me to act anymore. So I won't sin like that anymore. Without having to stop and be like, wait, God says not to do that, so I'm not going to do that. It's different. And that's the heart we want to have. We can't even imagine being the kind of person that would do that sin that we used to struggle with anymore. Like that's how fundamentally he can change us. That's what we need in our heart, is to not even be like, not even think that that's those things that we've struggled. We go through these cycles. Whatever it is for you, I don't want to throw out all these examples all the time of possible sins, whatever. But we have these cycles. We do it. We feel bad. We focus on it. Sometimes we'll be good for a while. We do it again, then we feel bad. Like that guilt cycle, that shame cycle. And it becomes, especially because of the repetition, there's brain pathways, there's chemistry, there's things that are going to ingrain that in you, plus just the spiritual aspect of repeated sin, that we probably, if we're in that cycle with them, we probably believe that's who we are on some level. We're the person that does that thing. And that is what God wants to change, is our identity, who we fundamentally believe we are. And that's what spending time with God can heal. That's what spending time communicating with each other and encouraging each other and being taking every opportunity we can to encourage, and we're coming up on that actually, but to it would be great to receive that from people, that encouragement. But the act of giving is greater than receiving. If we can, I think, be part of God's process of healing for someone else, that will produce greater rewards in us, I think, than even being the one receiving the encouragement. So taking that opportunity and being a part of God's redeeming process for people is also what's going to fundamentally change us. It does take sitting in quiet with him and spending time in the Word, but there's an action required, and I think that's a big part of the process. All right, let's keep moving. Yes. 15 to 18. And the Holy Spirit also bears witness to us. For after saying, "This is the covenant that I will make with them after those days, declares the Lord, I will put my laws in their hearts, write them on their minds." Then he adds, "I will remember their sins and their lawless deeds no more. Where there is forgiveness of these, there's no longer any offering for sin." This is the final section that wraps. This is the end of the previous section, and we're from here forward, we're going to be leading into the next couple chapters. This is quoting from Jeremiah 31. The section kind of is from 31 to 34 in Jeremiah 31, but the quotes are directly from, 33 and 34. And this was also quoted in Hebrews 8, 7 to 13. So this is kind of a callback to that. So this is Jeremiah talking about make sure I get this right. Yeah. So in chapter 8, they're quoting it, the perspective is from the Israelite point of view, and now we're using this. He's quoting it in view from the fulfillment of Christ, because this is kind of the end of that section. So it was like in the beginning, this was kind of the setup for the section, and now we're looking back. I'll read the Jeremiah, the 31 to 34. "Behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah, not like the covenant that I made with their fathers on the day when I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt. my covenant that they broke, though I was their husband, declares the Lord. For this is the covenant I will make with the house of Israel after those days, declares the Lord. I will put my law within them. I will write it on their hearts. I will be their God. They shall be my people. And no longer shall each one teach his neighbor and each his brother, saying, Know the Lord, for they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest, declares the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquity. I will remember their sin no more. So, again, this is the concept that everything in the law was an external thing. It did not fundamentally change their heart. There was no spirit living within them. It was a set of rules to kind of keep them constrained and to enable them to have some sort of relationship. But now that we have Jesus come and the spirit that followed him that came on Pentecost, and it inspired this scripture that we're reading right now and is living within us, our hearts can be changed. This law, this external list of rule kind of law, is changed to the heart of God imprinted on our hearts. And we are the perspective here is that we are a continuation of this nation of Israel. We are Israel now. When the church came, we are a continuation of that line now, those that have accepted him. And we get to live out the fulfillment of all these prophecies. That's what ties all of this Old Testament prophecy, Old Testament discussion of Jesus to us. It's why it's valuable to spend the time exploring it, because it gives us a fuller picture. A bunch of the tea bag broke or something in there. And anyway, a little grit with my tea there. All right, so if we look at Deuteronomy 6, that's a weird. 6, 4-9. We can see this command that God gave. So it says, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and with all your might. And these words I command you today shall be in your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. So God gave them this command, the Israelites, to put the word down, write it down, put it, talk about them, teach them to each other, and they will be like life-changing. That was the idea for it. But they didn't follow. They weren't able to do. They did not follow through with any of this. Obviously, they ended up in exile because they failed in all this. So what does God do? God writes it on our hearts himself. Like he knows over and over again, they're not going to do it, so I've got to do it myself for them. The covenant, I talked about the covenant with Abraham in the beginning when he cut the animals in half and the smoking fire pot and the torch, I think it's called, walk between them, because that was a covenant between God and Abraham, but God took both parts, whoever walked between, you were saying, you were covenanting, like, if I fail in this covenant, I'm going to be like these animals that are cut in half, that were walking in their blood between. And God took both sides. God took the consequence. Over and over again, God put something out there for his people to do. They couldn't do it, and he did it for them. And again, this is just another example of like how gracious and loving he is and how understanding of our frailty as humans He was like, they're not going to do this on their own, but I'm going to do it for them. I'm going to put it in their heart. They don't have to. It's fine. It's good to have verses around the house, and you see them, and you're reminded, and it helps to memorize and all that. But if it's not in your heart and changing you, then it's not making a difference. But God, the one who inspired the words, is in you now, is in your heart. And you don't have to go with all this external, trying things, and we can just fundamentally rest in him and rest and spend time with him and let him imprint more deeply and cleanse us from all our brokenness as we walk through this life. And the idea, I will remember their sins and lawless deeds no more. What's more comprehensive than God forgetting something? like how can you erase something even any more than that? God, who knows everything, created everything, forgets about it. It's gone. Doesn't exist. Yet we keep bringing him back up. I don't. There's this. I don't know. It's like we're trying to earn something. Sometimes I haven't been sorry enough yet, so I got to bring it back up. We just don't have a picture of who we really are, and we just keep bringing these things back up. And God's like, "What are you talking about? That doesn't exist for him anymore now that you've forgiven for it. So stop bringing it back up and move on like he has." All right. Next section. So this section basically goes through the end of chapter 12. We'll be covering a lot of that, obviously, but this is kind of the setup section, and then chapter 11 is all the list of the ones who've gone before us and how they lived out faithful lives, and we'll look at their example. So that'll be a fun one for me. Lots of history stuff there, so 19 to, let's read through verse 25. So this is the start of this new section. So this section is basically, now that you understand what Christ has done, draw near to him. Like, he spent the last few chapters giving you a picture of who Jesus is, what he's done, and just how amazing he is, and just this beautiful picture of how amazing Jesus is. And so, and all that he's done, and how perfectly humbly submitted he was to God to live the life he did. And now that he's set up this picture, then this is where he starts exhorting them to then, if this is the Jesus we have, this is the perfection we look to, then let's live away. Let's draw near to him, because life's not going to be easy all the time, and that's the strength that comes from our trust in who he is and what he's planned for us. So, I don't know. I guess it's getting kind of late. Let's leave that section for the next time. I do have a lot of notes on it. But I guess just a reminder again that of all the ways God could have let this play out, to create people in his image, people that he just wanted to have a relationship with, and as much as over and over and over and over again we screwed it up and we don't get it, and how we just missed the point so much. And he saw a way at great pain and expense to himself to bring us back, and to do it in a way like every other religion that I'm aware of, there's this striving. There's this, you've got to work at it. You've got to get this discipline down. You've got to do these. There's like levels of like crawling on your knees to places. Like some people can't physically do these things. Like God made it a way that all you have to do is just trust and obey, and anyone can do that. There is no one that can't turn and come to Him. I've referenced before. There's all across the Muslim world today, there are stories of people having dreams about a man in white and his Jesus, and they're being told to meet someone in the town square or whatever, and that person is a Christian and tells them about Jesus. God will meet anyone whose heart is towards Him, and it's that He gives us the grace to do it. It's just amazing how much He's God, so I think we lose perspective on that, but how much foresight and wisdom and grace He had in how He made a way for us back to Him. And to just take the time to honor and fellowship with Him and sit with Him and His Word, but also with each other, again, to grow and to shed off those things that are holding us back. And I said, I want to change. I just want to be able to, like, here, it's real to you now. Like, here's something for everybody. And but it is real to every one of us. We just don't quite process it. And obviously, there's levels to this too. It's not like there's an on-off switch with Jesus. Like, you've chosen to, you made the choice, and that invites you to a life of growing in Him. But like I said earlier, there's I was say you're good enough now. Well, yeah, I guess you are. Not through anything, obviously, not through anything we've done. None of us has earned anything here. It's all by His grace. But you are good enough now. There's no, it's not like God's going to love the you in 3 years when you get your act together. It's not like anything that's in you now is keeping you from being in His presence, to spending time with Him, to hanging out with Him, to being in connection with Him and fundamentally letting Him change you fundamentally. But there's also so much room to grow for every one of us too in the midst of it, that it's so easy to get caught up in whatever we got going on in life and seeing the things that we aren't like we want them to be, whatever that may be for any one of us. But it's done. It's all there for you right now. There is nothing keeping you from perfection in Christ except for growing in your understanding of that and we're all holding ourselves back in these little ways. So let's, again, just commit yourself to Him. But not that you haven't, if you haven't yet, let's renew our commitment to Him, because we can do that every day. And every day is a choice, but as we make those choices, we're changed more and more into His image, and the choices change. The choices grow. Like I said, we change who we fundamentally see ourselves as, and we don't make decisions if we don't see ourselves as a person that would make that choice. And so we see ourselves as people who spend time with God, who act in love towards each other, who focus on spreading God's love and his kingdom to the world around us, and walking in power, and see ourselves enabled by the Spirit to heal and to impart wisdom for people. And we see ourselves as people that bring God's kingdom to this earth without hesitancy, in boldness and clarity. And we hear God's voice and we know what to do in every moment. Like that's who we are. We just need to grow in seeing ourselves that way so that God can work in us and through us, that we're not limiting some of these things. To land the plane. I just want to keep going. But my words aren't going to change you. His grace and his Spirit, his truth is going to change you. I'm just encouraging you today to open yourselves up more and more to him, spending more time as you can with him. And it's not necessarily setting across blocks of time, it's the ability to commune with him throughout your day as you're living your life. Yes, he deserves dedicated time, but he says be continually in prayer. That means continually talking to God, continually in communion with him, continually connecting with him, and that's the life we can live, and that's going to change us into more and more into images of Christ. So let's worship him, focus on him, let him change us, grow us more and more into his image.